Well, Tim, welcome to the country. For the benefit of our audience, tell us a bit about yourself, how you got into this work.
So I was a corrections officer in Chicago back in 96. I then decided I didn't want to be a CO, corrections officer anymore. I wanted to get on the road and do street cop work. Tested for Las Vegas Metro back in 97 and got hired on, and did 5 years in patrol with Vegas Metro. And then my last 20 years on the job, I was narcotics. So I'm considered an expert witness in narcotics and in confidential informant handling. I retired back in 2022. My last year, I was doing the fentanyl overdose investigations. I got really burnt out seeing dead kids, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds. I got kids that age at home, and decided enough was enough. I had 25 years on. I retired. Now I go around the country, technically around the world, and speak to audiences about narcotics and narcotics investigations.
When I sat in on your session earlier, you showed a clip from TVNZ, which is our state broadcaster, and it was about New Zealand being called out in a US State Department briefing about fentanyl coming into the country.
Yep.
I think New Zealand's been a little bit focused on the meth issue and sort of have thought, okay, the fentanyl's a US issue. But your message to New Zealand seems to be, no, that's not the case.
No, as a matter of fact, the numbers I pulled up this week, well, since I've been here, shows that opioids are your number one overdose problem.
So when you say opioids, what do you mean?
Opioids could include nitazines, fentanyl, heroin, stuff along those lines, opioid-based synthetics, or like I said, heroin, which is a plant-based opioid.
And I think New Zealanders would say, oh yeah, heroin, we'd expect that. But fentanyl, has that really got into the country? And why is New Zealand seen as a market for fentanyl when we've got meth already?
Well, just like any other drug in New Zealand, the profit margin in New Zealand is way higher than in America or other spots in the world.
Why is the profit margin higher when you got to get it here in the first place?
It's because of the distance it takes to get here and the travel it's got to make to get here.
Right.
And obviously the limited availability in New Zealand as opposed to America where it's flooded the streets. One of the instructors just now was talking about, you guys, that most of your drugs are coming through the dark web.
Yeah.
You can get on the dark web today, order up fentanyl from a distributor in China, which is actually much closer than the U.S., and they can send it, or you can order it up from somebody down in Mexico and have it shipped. And I think some of the articles I showed in class today showed that you guys have had seizures. There was an article I shared where you guys had 12 overdose victims that were related to fentanyl.
Yeah. What's the difference between fentanyl and meth?
Fentanyl is an opioid. It's a depressant. It's going to just slow your respiratory system. Meth is a stimulant. No. It's going to increase your heart rate and whatnot, where an opioid's going to slow it down.
And so is there a certain predisposition of a person who would use meth versus fentanyl or vice versa? Or do they just combine them and just get whatever kick they can?
Well, nowadays they're combining. I just discussed today when I was speaking that Chicago undercover had purchased what he believed to be heroin, and it was meth, heroin, and fentanyl all mixed together. So there's no boundaries nowadays. Previously in Vegas, if you ran across somebody who was a meth addict, they strictly did meth.
Cool.
Now you got people that are mixing these drugs together. It's nothing different than a speedball back in the day, which was cocaine and heroin mixed together. Now you're getting cocaine and fentanyl mixed together, meth and fentanyl mixed together, and it just gives you that up and down effect.
And so one of the arguments that especially left-wing politicians use in New Zealand is that, look, we should just test the drugs, make sure it's pure MDMA or whatever, because that's safer than having all the additional stuff added to the drug. What's your response to that kind of mentality? Make it safer. Test the drug and make sure it's the pure.
So before they're giving it to that's crazy. I mean, that's absolutely asinine. I mean, like I talked to my class today, we're just putting Band-Aids on the problem instead of educating people. You're going to have children that are going to be dying of this drug in the near future if you don't get on top of it before it gets to your country. And it's already here. But before you start seeing what we see in Vegas and across the U.S. where we've got 13, 14, 15-year-old kids dropping dead from fentanyl, So you got to get on top of the problem before it happens and educate the citizens of New Zealand of how dangerous this drug is. That's already here. The cartels are here. The drug's here.
So have you heard of the concept of drug testing before? I mean, we have young people who might go to a festival or who go at the weekend, go down to a drug testing place, government funded, and they get the drug tested to make sure they are the pure illegal drug.
I have not heard of that. No, we don't have that in America. There are websites where you can go on and I can show somebody, okay, I've got this pill of MDMA. Is it pure MDMA or is it mixed with something else? And then folks at home are doing the tests and they're putting what their results are, but we don't have that in America.
Is there merit to that though? Can you see any merit to it?
Well, I mean, I guess it's making sure you're taking what you believe you're taking. So I mean,
is that good?
I guess, but I mean, is narcotics use good? I mean, we shouldn't be. Again, I think we're coddling the culture of that okay, it's okay to take as long as we know it's safe. Well, that doesn't mean that MDMA can't kill you in a pure form. You know, people overheat all the time at these rave clubs, and we get overdoses all the time with people taking pure MDMA. So we're saying it's okay to take an illegal drug as long as it's that what it's being purported to be. And I think that's just absurd.
I think New Zealanders are very familiar with heroin, ecstasy, meth. They've sort of been around for a long time.
Sure.
Fentanyl's the new kid on the block. So for our viewers, give us a Fentanyl 101 lesson. What is fentanyl? What's it about? What effect does it have and why is it dangerous?
So fentanyl was created back in, I believe it was 1959 by a chemist by the name of Paul Jansen. It's been around for a long time. It's been used as a medical opioid. My mother she had fentanyl patches when she had her back surgery. It's been used for years. The reason that we're seeing it now on the market is because Purdue Pharma created an opioid epidemic in the U.S. That was never seen before when they lied to the American citizens and the doctors in America saying that their drug was not addictive, when in fact it truly was. My mother was addicted to it. My mother-in-law died from it.
Like the tobacco industry.
Yes, yes. And Mexican cartels found a way to get into this market by bringing heroin. Once the FDA cracked down on the opioids, they brought in their heroin and was giving out free samples. We had kids in schools in Vegas that were getting free samples of heroin. Now they've got their kids addicted to heroin. Now they've just figured out a way to make fentanyl and put it in a pill form and make it look like oxycodone and get into a market that they didn't have part of before. They couldn't get into the oxycodone market because they didn't have chemists making the pills for them. Right. But now they've made it from fentanyl. And it's a much stronger and more addictive opioid than heroin. So if you get your customers addicted to fentanyl, they're going to come back every single time. And the heroin addicts don't like it because they don't understand that it's what they're purchasing is in fact a fentanyl, because they're making it look like heroin nowadays. We're getting heroin on the streets of Vegas that is being purported to be heroin, and it's really fentanyl mixed with corn syrup or vinegar to give it that heroin smell. And you've got heroin addicts taking it, not realizing that I take this much heroin every day, but now I'm taking this much fentanyl and I don't realize it's fentanyl, and we've got people dying from it. So the Mexican cartels have really taken over the industry of fentanyl, and mark my words, within the next year or two, you won't see any heroin anymore. It's all going to be fentanyl. Whether it looks like heroin, but it's fentanyl, whether it's pill form, powder form, it doesn't matter. And they're just coming up with new synthetic opioids to replace other synthetic opioids once they get cracked down on. The precursors, you guys are seeing nitazines here. And you've got a lot of overdoses from the nitazines, which is just another opioid, a stronger opioid than fentanyl.
Yeah. So what's your recommendation to New Zealand as to how they respond to this?
Like I spoke in my class today, education. Speak to your kids, go to schools, educate these kids on the dangers. We're getting fentanyl mixed with marijuana in the U.S. We're getting fentanyl mixed with cocaine. We're getting fentanyl mixed with methamphetamine. As a kid growing up in today's day and age, you cannot experiment with drugs anymore because you don't know what you're getting. You absolutely don't know what you're getting. At the end of my presentation, that's what I try to hit on the most, is educate and know what your kids are doing. Talk to your kids, know what they're doing, make sure they're safe. Get on their phones, see who they're talking to, get on their Snapchat, see who they're conversing with on Snapchat, because Snapchat's an open marketplace for drug sales. as is the dark web. So.
Yeah, can you just clarify for some people who won't know what you're referring to when you say dark web? What do you mean by that?
So there's apps like Tor. It's an open market for anything you want to purchase. It was created by the U.S. government. I don't know when it was created, but it was created by the U.S. government for operations, and then it was eventually taken over, made use to the public. And when you get on the dark web, you have an anonymity. It's running through different servers, so nobody knows who you are, and you're anonymous while you're on the dark web. And I can go on the dark web today. I could purchase a gun. I could purchase drugs. I could purchase a person if I wanted to purchase. And there's human trafficking going on. There's child pornography going on the dark web, and it's available for anybody to use. These sites will come down. The government will realize that there's a site that's being used to sell illegal activity and illegal substances. They'll take it down, and a new site will just pop back up.
Why haven't these sites been shut down?
They do get taken down, but the problem is these folks that are running these websites will just start up a new site,
right,
and they'll just start up a new sell site. And as Keith Graves was talking about in his presentation, all you got to do is go on Reddit, and you can figure out where the new sales site is, and then you get on the dark web using Tor, and then you can go to that website and purchase whatever you want.
I was both pleased and inspired by the fact that you have brought your two sons with you, and you make them come and sit in on your sessions.
Yes, absolutely.
What are you trying to achieve through that? Well, I know you are, but tell the audience.
I'm trying to educate them. I want to make them safe. I want to scare the out of them. Excuse my language. I want to scare them. I want to scare them so that they don't go out and try these drugs, and I don't have to be that parent that wakes up and finds my child dead. So it's the education part of it.
But the argument is that actually the scaring and the saying no is not going to work. It's better to teach them how to do it safely.
No, absolutely not. No.
I'm being devil's advocate here, by the way.
No. I absolutely want to scare my kids. I want to put the fear of death in them if they try something for the first time. It's not like when I grew up and I could try and experiment with drugs. So you can't do it nowadays without not knowing what you're actually putting in your body. So
it seems like, we'd like to keep the fentanyl out of the country, but that ship has sailed.
Yeah, it's already here. Yeah. And the cartels are here.
Okay. So what's your advice to politicians, legislators, in terms of how do they respond to this?
Well, I was just talking to some local law enforcement, and they said that the officers here don't even have Narcan on them. How are you going to, if your partner goes down?
Just explain, what's Narcan?
Narcan is it's the drug that blocks the opioid receptor. And I have some up in my room. It's just a small nasal spray. You spray it in your nose.
And I think there's been calls for ambulances to carry them.
They should all
in New Zealand.
Yeah.
But you made a very good point during your session, is that when someone is totally off it, you need a buddy to save them. You'll never self-administer it, will you?
No. So I was, in America, we're putting a Band-Aid on the problem by providing free Narcan, free test strips to these addicts. And I'm finding them on our search warrants, on our death scenes. They've got that stuff. But like I said, unless you're working in a buddy system and you and I are here watching each other, I'm going to take it first and you're going to watch me take it. If we're taking it together and we both go out, who's going to Narcan us? Nobody.
Yeah.
Because nobody else is going to be there. And I think it's absurd that the law enforcement and the medical EMT personnel don't have this on hand, because it's only a matter of time before one of your officers or one of your medics goes down giving CPR to somebody who's got fentanyl on their lips or something, and now you've got an officer or a medic down and you don't have anything to save their life, which the Narcan, like I said, will block that opioid receptor. But with carfentanil, you may take 5 or 6 of those Narcans before they come out of it, and then you're going to have to keep giving them that Narcan while they're going to the hospital.
Right.
So... and then, obviously I discussed, education is key. In Vegas, we got billboards all over Vegas, about one pill can kill, stuff like that. So your government should be out there educating, having the cops go to these schools and talk to kids about the dangers of drug use nowadays. Again, putting the fear into them that that one time could be your last chance, and that one pill could kill you.
So is saying something radical like don't do drugs, is that actually got a place now?
Absolutely, 100%. I love the old videos where they crack the eggs in the frying pan. This is your brain on drugs. yeah, go back to that. You know, put the fear of God in them that if they take that, they might die.
Yeah. So for the states, has there been calls to, I mean, we've seen the calls for medicinal marijuana, then it was legalized recreational use of marijuana, magic mushrooms. Has there been calls to legalize fentanyl in this so-called experiment that somehow that'll drop use?
So there's not in certain states there is. I was just in
Really?
Pennsylvania, and the guys in Pennsylvania told me that anything under 7 grams of any illicit drug is a misdemeanor there. So you got, you know, you
So
have
it's a
under 7
decriminalization.
grams. They've pretty much decriminalized it.
Right.
I don't know what Colorado's laws are. Thank God in Vegas we're still, it's still illegal. I mean, we've kind of decriminalized marijuana, but that's the only one. All the other drugs are still felonies if you get caught with them. But
we haven't quite got
every
to the,
state's different.
Yeah, we haven't quite got to that. We've got to the police discretion, not quite the full-on decriminalization.
Okay, good.
But there are calls for decriminalization. That would be a dangerous step, would it?
I think if you talk to the guys from Colorado, they would tell you what it's done to their cities. And even the decriminalization of marijuana has increased the number of illegal clandestine grow sites throughout Vegas, like through the roof. Because some of these legal grow shops are purchasing from those illegal growers without the government knowing. And even in Vegas, they're already up in arms because we have one of the worst school systems in the country. And that money, some of that money from the taxation on the marijuana was supposed to go to the schools. And people are like, where's this money going? So it's not working. It doesn't work in Vegas. The robberies have gone up. Violent crime has gone up because of those. Like I said, the illicit marijuana grow houses have gone up.
If we were the most charitable we could be, we could say, okay, those who wanted to legalise marijuana, or cannabis as we call it in New Zealand, what they were trying to do was drive drug use down to the kind of the least harm drug, and it would drive people away from using fentanyl and the harder drugs. Is there any truth to that?
No, absolutely not.
Is it a gateway?
I would say, yeah. I mean, I think alcohol's a gateway. When I was a kid, I did alcohol. I tried marijuana. I dabbled with other stuff. Drugs in general are a gateway because they kind of put down your guard and lower your inhibitions, and you go out and try other stuff. Yeah. So, and marijuana is no different. And we've legalized it in Vegas, and it hasn't changed any other drug market. We haven't seen opioid overdoses decrease. Actually, opioid overdoses in Las Vegas or Nevada have actually gone up. Well, one of the 5 states where the overdoses have gone up.
Yeah.
So it's definitely doesn't work.
So you identified in New Zealand that the opioid deaths are high.
Yes.
But the usage is still quite low in New Zealand. But you're warning us that usage is going to increase over time. I guess
absolutely. People
like the addiction. They want more of it, and they share the addiction.
Absolutely. And the fact that you have, heroin addicts, heroin's going to the wayside. It's going to be fentanyl in the future, or it's going to be some other opioid synthetic.
Why's heroin gone to the wayside?
Because it takes 5 months to grow a poppy, and it takes 10 kilos of opium gum to make 1 kilo of heroin. It's a lot of time and effort put into it when I can make a synthetic for way less. I think Heath was just talking about in his class, a kilo of heroin in Mexico goes for, $5,500, and you can make it fentanyl kilogram of heroin for like $1,000 or $100.
Yeah,
it's so much cheaper. It's so much cheaper and so much easier to make, and way quicker. I can make it in 1 or 2 days as opposed to 5 months. So I think heroin will go to the wayside. We're going to all synthetics in the future, and you won't see much plant-based drugs anymore.
So what would be your advice to what we call the Minister for Police, or even to the Police Commissioner, in terms of dealing with the issue of fentanyl addiction and coming into the country, the market?
Like I said, I would, for one, I would educate the officers, educate the public, provide them with the tools they need, the Narcan, provide them with the training they need to understand, to come to conferences like this and have us come and train them on what they need to be looking for. Because when I was working in patrol, one of my last years, I was with my partner who was a 25-year patrol cop. And we were out on the street because once a year they make the undercovers dress up in a uniform and go out on the street. and I'm out there with them, and we do a car stop, and I look in the car and I see aluminum foil sitting in the center console with what we call a snail trail and a pill at the end of it. And I tell my partner, I said, go ahead and yank him out of the car. We've got PC to get in this car, probable cause to get in this car. And we get him out, and my partner goes, what did you see? And this is a 25-year veteran police officer. I said, didn't you see the aluminum foil with the snail trail in the center console? Because I didn't even know what that was, man. You got to educate your cops so they know what they're looking for. You got to educate your cops that these pills on the street are 100% of the time going to be counterfeit nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to be legal prescriptions that they're getting from their doctor and from a pharmacy.
Has it made workplaces more unsafe because of use of fentanyl and these other harder drugs?
Absolutely. I mean, we've had in Vegas, we had a car dealership in Vegas where several employees all went down the same day because they all probably went on break and took what they thought was a Percocet, and it was a counterfeit fentanyl pill.
Dude.
You know, we've got scenes in Vegas. We had a school in Vegas where we had, I think, 7 kids on the soccer team all take a Perc 30, and they all went down. You know, none of them died, thank God, but, you know, you're going to see this in your workplace. You're going to see the increase of it out here like we're seeing in the U.S.
So just finally, for the families, for the parents that are watching this, what's your word of encouragement to them? What's your advice?
Educate, know what your kids are doing, be on their phones, look at their phones, look at their Snapchats, look at their Discords. If they've got dark web on their phone, why do they have dark web on their phone? Why do they have the Tor app on their phone? Know what your kids are doing. Put a Life 360 app on their device so that you know where they're at all time. You know, if they're under your roof, you should know what your kids are doing at all times. Ask questions. Go search their drawers. You know, I do that with my kids. My kids don't know when I go into their rooms and search their stuff. You're under my roof. You're under 18. You know, I have that right to go do that.
Do you think there's a level of ignorance about fentanyl, thinking, oh, no, it's not in our country, no, it's not in our community, and no, my kids don't know about it?
Absolutely. I think New Zealand thinks it's not here, and I'll tell you right now, the cartels are here. The fentanyl's here. I showed articles during my presentation that it's here. I showed an article of folks overdosing here. It's here. It's here to stay. You got to educate, and you got to be proactive and go out and hit the streets and look for it.
Yeah. Tim, really appreciate your work in this area. It's really important, and thanks for the warning.
Absolutely.
And hopefully people heed what you're saying. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Take care.